The train hissed as it pulled away, leaving John standing alone with a suitcase in one hand and a bag full of ornate gifts in the other. He glanced around the empty platform of the city's dusty countryside station. No sign of the Liu family. No sign of his fiancée, Sophia, not even a driver. Strange. For a family with supposed deep city roots and a daughter betrothed since childhood, it felt cold. Shrugging off the chill in his chest, John hailed a bus and made his own way to First High School, gifts bumping against his legs at every stop. His father had told him this engagement was a promise forged in old wartime bonds. "We're not shallow people," he had said. "Even if the girl's family is struggling, we keep our word. That's called being a man." He stepped into the classroom just as the teacher was introducing him. "This is our new transfer student. Everyone, welcome John." A few polite claps followed. The teacher pointed to the empty desk at the back, right next to a girl hunched low, scribbling in a worn-out notebook. As John made his way down the aisle, his school bag snagged against the corner of her desk. Something rolled out, an enamel mug with a faded cartoon print, chipped around the rim. It clanged across the floor and cracked open. A half-eaten, hardened steamed bun rolled out, hitting the linoleum with a soft thud. Silence, then snickers. "She still eats those?" someone whispered. "God, that's pitiful." John blinked. The girl beside him didn't move, her shoulders frozen, her pen trembling in her grip. Her long hair veiled her face as if she'd rather disappear into the desk than acknowledge what just happened. She made no move to retrieve the food. He knelt down silently, picked up the bun, brushed it off with his sleeve, and tucked it gently back into the chipped mug. Then, ignoring the low chuckles still echoing, he placed it back under her desk and took his seat beside her. "Sorry," he whispered. "Didn't mean to." She didn't respond, her eyes stayed glued to her notebook. "I'm John," he tried again. "Do you remember me?" No answer. A beat passed. Then she lifted her head just a fraction. Her profile caught the sunlight, slanting through the window in soft gold. Delicate brows, straight nose, pale skin. She was beautiful, but so withdrawn she barely seemed to breathe. He swallowed. "We met once when we were 6. You're Sophia, right?" She stiffened. He leaned closer, whispering, "I was told you'd be here. I even brought gifts. For your family." That did it. She jerked her head up, eyes wide. And in those dark, startled eyes, something cracked. She choked on her water bottle and coughed violently. John panicked, reaching over. "Hey, are you okay?" He patted her back gently. When she finally recovered, her voice rasped, low and brittle. I don't know what you're talking about." He froze. "You're not Sophia?" "No." "Oh. I thought—" He trailed off, confused. The bell rang. She turned back to her notebook, jaw set tight. John sat there, stunned. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a neatly packed bento box, pork cutlets, 2 slices of peach, warm rice. Without a word, he slid it onto her desk. She didn't look at him, but her fingers brushed the box. Slowly, wordlessly, she accepted it. In that moment, he didn't know if she was lying or just shy. He didn't know why his fiancée hadn't come. He only knew one thing. This girl in front of him, dusty-eyed, silent, guarded, was starving. And he had more than enough to give. John had always grown up in rooms too large and too quiet. His father, a self-made real estate mogul, wasn't the kind of rich man who wore diamonds or traveled with a security convoy. But everyone in their region knew the Stone family, especially Mr. Stone's only son, John. From the marble floors of their villa to the international prep schools he was shipped off to, everything in John's life had been designed to look pristine, controlled, and inherited. But behind closed doors, John's father was never obsessed with appearances. "I earned this, not borrowed it," he would say often. "The only thing you ever inherit is character. Never forget that." Their wealth came fast, built off a risky investment in failing industrial land that became a shopping district. But the values had been planted even earlier, long before they were rich. It was why John had memorized the story of his childhood betrothal. "Her name's Sophia," his father once said, handing him an old black and white photo. "The Liu family, good people. Her grandfather and I made a promise. You'll understand someday." John had barely been 6 at the time. In the photo, a girl with pigtails wore a satin dress, holding a parasol under cherry blossom trees, delicate, proud, chin slightly raised. That was the Sophia in his memory, and in his imagination, she'd grown into someone elegant, maybe cold at first, but warm once you got past the surface. Now, years later, he was here to see her again, with his father's permission and a school transfer slip in hand. Supposedly, she studied at First High School in City C. His father believed John wouldn't take the betrothal seriously unless he saw the girl with his own eyes. "Get into a good college while you're at it," his father said. "If you like her, great. If not, we'll still honor the promise, but you decide." John had imagined the moment 100 times, him arriving, the two of them meeting, recognizing each other immediately like some perfect cliché. But none of that happened. No pickup from the train station, no welcome from the Liu family, no Sophia waiting in ribbons and perfume. Instead, he met her, or who he thought was her, like this, sitting beside a chipped mug and a crumbling steamed bun. Deborah. That's what everyone called her, not Sophia. She barely spoke. Even when he introduced himself that first day, she only glanced at him, then returned to her notes. Her voice, when it came, was quiet and dry, like paper rubbed between fingers. But she wasn't rude. She helped him find the water station after class. She corrected his math homework once, quietly slipping a page into his book without a word. He watched her mop floors after class, accept coins from classmates to clean in their place. Her uniform was clean but faded. Her long dark hair was always tied back simply. She wore no makeup. Her eyes, when not cast downward, looked like they had weathered every rainstorm and still waited for one more. So he assumed, this must be Sophia, the girl whose family had gone bankrupt, the one trying to hide her pride behind a new name. It made sense. No wonder no one had picked him up. No wonder she didn't want to talk about the past. And yet, he couldn't help but notice, even as she ignored him, that she always placed her textbooks in perfect alignment. That her handwriting was flawless. That she ranked first in the grade in every subject. He'd overhear others muttering, "Deborah, she's always like that, doesn't talk to anyone, not even friends, strange, right?" Strange, maybe, but kind. One day after school, he saw her carry an extra bowl of soup to the janitor and place it beside his mop bucket before walking off without a word. Another day, she helped a limping boy pick up his spilled notes, always unnoticed, always silent. John didn't know why, but something about her gentleness unnerved him more than any beauty ever had. He started watching her more, not like a stalker, but like someone who had just been handed a mystery and couldn't stop reading. Meanwhile, the rest of the class buzzed around him like bees tasting sugar. They all knew who he was, John Stone, big house, bigger car, transfer student from the capital. Girls tried to sit next to him during lab, boys asked about his shoes. He responded politely, but his attention always drifted back to the quiet girl by the window. He tried, more than once, to make her smile. He brought 2 boxes of fried chicken and offered one. She refused. He left it on her desk. She gave it to the cleaner. Then, a week after his arrival, he heard his name whispered behind the stairwell. 3 days, a sugary voice giggled. Told you he'd give up by now. He paused. Hidden around the corner, he recognized the speaker, Maria, the girl who'd first pointed him toward Deborah on his first day. "I mean, look at him," Maria went on, giggling with a group of girls. "Still sitting next to Deborah every day. He thinks she's Sophia. Isn't that wild?" Another girl gasped. "He really doesn't know?" "Not a clue," Maria laughed. "Sophia told me not to say anything, just let him stew in it." "Sophia? The real one, duh. She's been watching everything, told me to tell him Deborah was her, said he'd walk away once he saw how miserable she looks. And if he doesn't? She said, then he's dumber than I thought, but I doubt it. Give it time. That country boy'll run back to the capital in no time." John's stomach dropped. Sophia. So. Ra wasn't his fiancée, Sophia was, and Sophia had sent someone else to impersonate her, to drive him away. All the silence, the poverty, the blank stares, none of it had been a coincidence. He stepped back from the stairwell, breath caught in his throat. His first instinct wasn't anger, it wasn't even betrayal. It was this odd, gut-twisting disappointment. Because in all the time he'd been here, He had never once imagined that the elegant Sophia, the girl from the photo, the girl in the cherry blossoms, would laugh behind corners at a boy she hadn't even spoken to. But Deborah had never once mocked him. She had just existed, honestly, quietly, truthfully. And somehow, that had moved him more than anything else. It had become routine. Every morning before homeroom, John would stop by the bakery near the villa gates, choosing a pastry Deborah hadn't tried yet. Cheese-filled croissants. Pineapple buns. Once, even a red bean mochi she swore she didn't like, but finished anyway. He always placed it on her desk before the others came in, not saying a word, and she always accepted, never thanking him aloud, but eating slowly and completely, eyes a little softer each time. He protected her in subtle ways, blocking bullies in the hallway, helping clean when she was too tired, whispering jokes during long math lectures just to draw out the faintest curve of her lips. In John's mind, this was all a kind of repair. If Sophia, who he still thought Deborah was, had fallen from a once great life into poverty, then he'd be the one to catch her silently, to remind her she hadn't lost everything. He didn't need acknowledgement, just her company. And slowly, the girl who used to speak in half sentences began to linger after class. She waited for him before walking home. She handed him extra notes with highlighted tips for exams. Her eyes still held sorrow, but now they held reflection too. Sometimes, John caught her staring when she thought he wasn't looking. One rainy afternoon, she slipped a piece of candied ginger into his palm during history class. "For your throat," she whispered. "You've been coughing." It was the first time she'd ever initiated anything. He kept the candy wrapper tucked in his wallet. Then came Friday. He'd barely walked into the school gates when the air shifted. Whispers rustled around like dry leaves, students turning heads, phones angled discreetly. Some of the girls who used to giggle around him now wore puzzled frowns. Even the teacher looked uncertain when John walked into the classroom. He paused in the doorway. Sophia stood in front of Deborah's desk. She was dressed immaculately, pressed cream blouse, pleated skirt, leather loafers polished to a gleam. Her golden brown curls framed a face that was both striking and unnervingly familiar. The same face from the old photo his father once handed him, only sharper now, more arrogant. Deborah sat frozen, head bowed, hands clenched tightly in her lap. Sophia turned, and the moment her eyes locked with John's, she smiled like a performer hitting her cue. "John," she said sweetly, "I've been looking for you." He blinked. "I'm sorry. What?" "I'm Sophia," she said. "Your fiancé." Gasps echoed in the room. John glanced at Deborah. She didn't move. His voice dropped. "What? What do you mean?" Sophia's eyes sparkled. "Oh, come on. You really thought she was me?" She tossed a perfectly manicured hand toward Deborah. "You poor thing. That's just Deborah, our school's charity case." A stunned silence fell. Deborah's shoulders visibly shrank. Her eyes didn't rise, not even a flicker. John took a step back, words stuck in his throat. She didn't even deny it. Sophia went on, lips curling. "What, did you think we changed our names, that I had to work part-time to survive?" She laughed softly. "You've always been so romantic." "That's enough," John said, sharper than intended. "Oh, don't be mad," Sophia teased. "It was just a harmless game. You were never supposed to take it seriously." Before he could reply, another voice cut in. "Seriously? You're acting like he lost something valuable," Ryan said, sauntering over. His perfectly styled hair barely moved despite the breeze from the open door. He slipped an arm lazily around Sophia's shoulders and gave Deborah a long, disdainful look. "This is who you fell for?" Ryan snorted. "A girl who faked being your fiancé and couldn't even do it convincingly?" Deborah didn't speak. Her silence was louder than screams. "She didn't fake anything," John said. Ryan tilted his head mockingly. "Then what do you call it? Playing house with a rich boy while wearing clearance bin shoes?" Sophia laughed behind her hand. "He used to leave food on her desk, Ryan, like a puppy." "Don't," John snapped. "Don't call her that." The laughter died. Sophia's expression shifted. "So, you're defending her now?" John didn't answer. His gaze was locked on Deborah, who had finally looked up. Her eyes met his, full of something tired and unspoken. Not apology, not fear, just goodbye. Then she stood, grabbed her backpack, and walked out of the room without a word. The class watched her go. Some looked away, uncomfortable, others whispered. Sophia crossed her arms. "So dramatic. John turned and followed Deborah. He found her behind the science building, crouched against the brick wall, hands gripping her sleeves. She wasn't crying, she never cried. But her lips were pressed so tightly together, they were white. "You should go back," she said. He ignored that. "Why didn't you tell me?" She didn't answer. "I would have believed you, I would have believed anything you said." She looked at him then. "That's exactly why I didn't." He knelt beside her. "You let me make a fool of myself. I didn't ask for anything." "No, but you didn't stop it either." She flinched. He ran a hand through his hair, anger fading into weariness. "I thought you were her. But you were better." She stared at him. "That doesn't matter now." "It does to me." She stood slowly. "It shouldn't." And then she walked away again, leaving him alone with a truth he wasn't ready to face. He had fallen in love with the wrong girl. Or maybe, just maybe, he had finally found the right one. The Monday after the confrontation, Deborah didn't show up for homeroom. Her seat beside John sat empty, sunlight drifting across the worn desk where she usually scribbled notes in her neat, compressed handwriting. The mug that once held her hardened steamed bun was gone, no faded schoolbag hung on the side hook. John stared at that space for too long. Around him, the classroom buzzed differently, loud whispers, side glances. Someone had taped a note to her chair, "Gold digger's seat." A crude drawing followed, a girl with tangled hair holding a sign that said "Rich husband wanted." He tore it down before the teacher walked in, but it didn't stop there. When Deborah returned the next day, her locker had been graffitied. Marker scrolls of "fake fiancé," "liar," and "selt for snacks" bled across the metal. A spilled soda had soaked through her textbooks, crushed bread and yogurt were stuffed through the slats. She didn't cry, she just stood there quietly, emptied everything into a trash bag, then opened a fresh notebook and began copying from her soaked notes. John saw it all, the way she didn't flinch, didn't ask for help, didn't even look for the culprits. But he recognized the voices that laughed too loudly nearby, saw the same cluster of girls who once orbited Sophia now pointing in Deborah's direction and giggling like predators scenting blood. He tried to clean her locker after she left, she never mentioned it. That week, he noticed her doing classroom chores that weren't hers, sweeping after lunch, mopping in silence. When he finally cornered one of the boys who usually took that duty, the guy just shrugged. She offered, said she needed the money, 10 yuan per job. 10 yuan, that's what her dignity was going for. The next day, John handed her a sandwich. She didn't take it. "You shouldn't be here," she said flatly. "They'll just start on you next." "I can handle it," he replied. "But can you?" She met his eyes, something fragile breaking just beneath the surface. "I don't need your pity." "Then what do you need?" Her silence was answer enough. He tried again. "You're still helping me with finals, right?" She paused. "If you want to pass." He smiled faintly. "Then don't disappear." But something had shifted. She no longer waited for him after school. She kept a calculated distance, never rude, never dismissive, just absent in the places that mattered. And yet, she still left solved problems tucked into his books, still corrected his grammar in margins, still whispered quiet answers when the teacher called on him and he blanked. She hadn't abandoned him, she'd only retreated, into silence. He hated it. Meanwhile, Sophia was having the time of her life. "Isn't it cute?" she giggled, showing off a couple's charm bracelet in the cafeteria. "John and I picked them out together." The girls surrounding her squealed in admiration, though some clearly knew it wasn't true. John hadn't gone near that jewelry store. Sophia had simply followed him to the mall and posed it as coincidence. Now she paraded him through the hallways like a trophy she'd reclaimed. He didn't argue, he didn't correct her, but he didn't smile either. Sophia noticed. "You're not saying much," she said one afternoon, arms linked in his like some glossy magazine cover. "I've got exams coming up," he replied. She pouted. "You never used to be this dull." He pulled away. "Maybe you never knew me." She didn't understand. But Deborah did. One evening, unable to focus, John wandered toward the food stalls behind the West Campus. The place buzzed with cheap neon and steam, stir-fry smoke mingled with laughter, Loud music played from a broken speaker above a bubble tea cart. He stood quietly at the edge of a noodle stall, just out of sight. Deborah was there, apron tied around her waist, sleeves rolled up. She moved efficiently between woks, flame leaping beneath her pan. Her hair was tied back, and her cheeks glowed from the heat. She looked so alive in that moment, not silent, not broken, just focused. He didn't step forward, he simply watched. She handed a bowl to a waiting customer, then glanced up, pausing mid-turn. Their eyes met. For a second, neither of them moved, then she turned away and disappeared behind the curtain to the back. John stayed there, unmoving. He didn't know why he came, he only knew he'd rather stand in the noise and grease of that alley than sit across from Sophia in some designer cafe. He began to return. Not every night, but often enough. Sometimes he ordered a bowl, sometimes he didn't. Sometimes he only stood in the shadows, watching her hands move, her hair fall loose, her eyes narrow when she focused. She never spoke to him again at the stall. But she always placed an extra boiled egg in his bowl. "Why are you wasting your time?" Ryan scoffed, slinging an arm over John's chair during break one day. "Still chasing that knockoff?" John said nothing. Ryan laughed. "Come on, Sophia's the real deal. Money, beauty, power, she's your league. That Deborah girl, she was just a prop, a way to test your patience. Can't believe you fell for it." John turned his head slowly. "You ever had to work for something you actually care about?" Ryan blinked. "What?" John stood. "Thought not." The final break before exams came, Sophia cornered him after class. "You've been cold," she said, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "Is it because of her?" John didn't answer. "You're my fiancé," she reminded him. "This isn't how it's supposed to be." He looked at her then, really looked. She was beautiful, yes, sharp, well-dressed. She wore perfume like armor and smiled with all her teeth. But none of that moved him anymore. "Supposed to be?" he echoed. Sophia tilted her head. "We belong together. It's obvious." John slid his hands into his pockets. "Then why do I feel like I'm suffocating every time you're near me?" She recoiled. "What did she do to you?" "She reminded me what it feels like to care about someone who doesn't expect anything back." Sophia's eyes flashed. "So you're throwing me away for a girl who lied to you?" He didn't reply. But inside, he knew, Deborah never lied. She just never asked to be chosen. And that made him want to choose her all the more. The first warning came during PE. John had just finished his laps when he overheard two girls murmuring behind the bleachers. "She hasn't come out for ages." "Are you sure they locked her in?" "I saw it. Makoto and the others, they shoved her in the old equipment room under the stadium, said she needed to be taught a lesson." John's feet froze mid-step. He didn't ask questions. He ran. The equipment room hadn't been used in years, a dingy concrete block beneath the bleachers, more like a bunker than a storage space. The moment he reached the rusted door, his breath caught. The lock had been forced shut with wire. He didn't hesitate. He kicked once, then again, then harder, until the hinges cried and the door flung open with a metallic shriek. A flood of dust escaped, thick and dry. Inside, curled on the cold concrete, was Deborah. Her knees were drawn to her chest. Her school bag had been dumped beside her, torn open, books scattered. Her uniform was smudged with dirt, one sleeve torn. Her hair was damp with sweat, her cheeks streaked with dried tears. She didn't move when he burst in. Only when he knelt beside her did she whisper, "You came?" "I'll always come," he said. She blinked at him slowly, as if unsure he was real. "I didn't scream." "I know." "I thought—" She stopped. He reached out and cupped the side of her face gently. "Let's go." Outside, the students had begun to gather, drawn by the commotion. Someone muttered, "It's true, they really locked her in." John turned toward the group. "Who did it?" Silence. Then Makoto stepped out from the crowd, arms folded, trying to mask his guilt with bravado. "She's a liar, she deserves it," trying to act all innocent. John didn't let him finish. His fist met Makoto's jaw in one clean, perfect arc. The boy crumpled like paper. "Touch her again," John said calmly, flexing his knuckles, "and I won't stop at your face." No one dared reply. That evening, a message pinged on John's phone, from an unknown number. You should hear this. She's not just cruel, she's proud of it. Attached was a voice recording. John played it. Sophia's voice was unmistakable, sweet and venom-laced. Of course I had Deborah pretend to be me, how else was I going to avoid that ridiculous marriage? Laughter. But guess what? He actually fell for her. I mean, Deborah, of all people, she can't even afford lunch. Another voice chimed in, Maria's. You're just mad he likes her more now. Shut up, I told you. This was just to make him leave, not to make me look like a fool, if my grandfather finds out. The clip ended. John sat in stunned silence. Then he sent the file to one more number, his father's. The reply came minutes later. We're ending the engagement, permanently. Sophia waited for him at the front gates the next morning, arms folded, expression tight. You haven't answered my messages, she said sharply. Why? He didn't slow. She stepped in front of him. John? He looked at her. Sophia's expression softened. Look, I know things got messy, but this was never supposed to hurt anyone. I just wanted a choice, and I didn't want you to think less of me. We're both from the same world. I was trying to. You lied, he said. Sophia faltered. I made a mistake. No, you made a mockery. He took a step closer, voice low and calm. You used Deborah as a shield, then mocked her behind her back. You let her get bullied, hurt, humiliated, all so you could avoid your grandfather's promise. She wasn't supposed to get involved, but she did, and you never stopped it. Sophia's hands trembled. Okay, I get it, you're angry, but you can't seriously think she belongs with someone like you. John laughed once, cold and sharp. That's the thing, I don't care what anyone thinks I belong to, I know who I choose. She blinked. So that's it? Yeah, that's it. Then he walked past her, toward the school gates where Deborah stood, holding a fresh stack of books, her gaze wary, guarded. He reached her side. Everyone watched. John held out his hand. Come on, I'll walk you home. Deborah looked at him, expression unreadable. Sophia was still standing in the distance, frozen. John didn't look back. Deborah finally reached out, slowly, almost like she was testing if he'd vanish. Their fingers brushed, then held. And when she nodded silently, walking beside him under the weight of every gaze in the school courtyard. That was the moment the lie shattered. And the truth, the quiet, steady, unwavering truth, took its place. The ballroom glittered beneath crystal chandeliers, the air thick with applause, camera flashes, and the quiet elegance only academia dressed in silk could command. Deborah stood on stage in a floor-length navy gown, minimal jewelry, no makeup beyond a soft lip. Her hair, pinned neatly in a low chignon, caught the golden light of the spotlights as she accepted the International Astrophysics Laureate Award. She was the youngest recipient in history. The moment was being live-streamed across 3 continents. She held the plaque close to her chest, bowed slightly, and stepped back from the podium. She didn't say much, she never did. But everyone noticed that she'd thanked only 2 people. My mother, and the man who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Down below, John clapped the loudest. Dressed in a tailored black suit, cufflinks glinting, he stood proudly amid diplomats, researchers, and media elites. His hair was slightly tousled from the wind outside. On his wrist, a slim silver watch. Deborah had given it to him years ago, after her first journal was published. He still wore it every day. The crowd erupted in congratulations as Deborah stepped down. She scanned the floor, eyes immediately finding him. She didn't smile, not yet, but the way her shoulders loosened said everything. John slipped his hands into his pockets and waited. But before she could reach him, a familiar voice sliced through the crowd like a blade wrapped in velvet. Congratulations, Sophia purred. Deborah turned. Sophia stood alone, no entourage, no designer bag, no camera trailing her. Just a fitted dress she'd likely worn twice already, and a face tight with pride dressed up as poise. It had been almost 6 years since they last stood face to face. Sophia had vanished shortly after her family's quiet financial collapse. The whispers said her parents moved abroad, that she'd married an oil executive in haste, divorced him quicker, and burned half her bridges in the process. Whatever the truth, she now stood here, uninvited and out of place, her expression cool and brittle. Deborah held her gaze. You came to a science award ceremony. Must be fate, Sophia smiled. Or karma. Deborah arched an eyebrow. Which am I? I'm not here to fight, Sophia said, though her voice held the sharpness of glass. I just thought, after all these years, we could finally talk, woman to woman. I'm listening, Deborah said calmly. Sophia's lips curled. You really did it, huh? From dusty notebooks to Nobel tier stages. Deborah stayed silent. You know, I've thought a lot about you, Sophia said. About how you inserted yourself into a place that was never yours. You're wrong, Deborah replied softly. I never inserted myself. You left, you set up the pieces. I just happened to be standing where you didn't want to. Sophia's nostrils flared. You stole him from me. No, Deborah said, tilting her head. You gave him away. I just didn't drop him. The crowd nearby began to notice, phones discreetly raised, eyes shifted. The tension was palpable, like static before a storm. Sophia's smile cracked. He only chose you because of guilt. Deborah finally smiled. No, he chose me because I never lied about who I was. Sophia blinked, just once. Then a new voice broke in, casually cruel. Well, Ryan said, stepping into the light, isn't this awkward? He looked almost the same, older, more polished, wearing his wealth like a second skin. The kind of man who chased relevance wherever he could find it. His tie was perfectly knotted, his expression dripping charm. Still hanging on to the past, ladies? He grinned. Didn't think you two would end up circling the same man for over a decade. Sophia shot him a glare. No one invited you. Still bitter, huh? He turned to Deborah. You look great, smart, successful, beautiful, quite the glow up. Deborah gave him a slow blink. He leaned in. You know, people would kill to have what you have now, and the spotlight, it doesn't last forever. Maybe you and I should. Ryan, John's voice cut through like thunder. Everyone turned. He was walking toward them now, each step measured and sure, the whole room turning as he moved through the crowd like the center of gravity had shifted. He didn't spare Sophia or Ryan a glance. He went straight to Deborah. And then, in front of an audience of scholars, press and half the National Science Board, John took her hand, pulled her gently forward, and dropped to one knee. Gasps fluttered through the ballroom like wind in silk. Deborah blinked. John? He didn't let her finish. He pulled a small black box from his inner jacket pocket. Opened it. A simple diamond ring inside. Nothing flashy, nothing cold. Just timeless, honest. I've waited long enough, he said, voice steady. Through school, through exams, through everything that tried to break us. You've carried more than anyone ever should, and you've never asked for anything, but I want to give you everything. The lights shimmered around them, cameras flashed, even the servers had stopped moving. John's voice lowered, meant only for her. Deborah, you are the reason I found out who I really am. You're not just the girl who saved me from an arranged marriage. You're not just the woman who worked 3 jobs and still topped the rankings. You are my axis, my gravity, my only universe. Marry me. A long pause. Her lips trembled. And then, she laughed. A single breath of joy, cracked from disbelief. Yes, she whispered. He slipped the ring on her finger. The applause broke like a wave across the hall. Ryan backed away. Sophia disappeared through a side door, face blank. And Deborah. Once the invisible girl by the window, once the girl who mopped floors for 10 yuan, stood tall in the center of the world. She didn't just win John. She won everything they said she could never reach. The house they built together was tucked at the edge of a quiet hillside, overlooking a valley where fog rolled in slow and low every morning. It was not a palace, not a fortress, just home, wooden beams, sun-warmed balconies, overflowing bookshelves, and a kitchen where 2 coffee mugs always sat side by side, even on the days they weren't used. Deborah had chosen the curtains herself. John had assembled the bookshelf with his own 2 hands, cursing under his breath when one of the planks didn't fit. Their life wasn't grand, it was grounded, lived, shared. After their wedding, John had stepped down from his father's company within a year, shifting from the CEO's chair to an investor's desk so he could focus on something else, something greater. I want to build something for her, he said, something that lives beyond my name, and he did. The Deborah Lynn Institute for Astrophysics and Theoretical Mechanics opened 2 years after their marriage, a white stone campus with sprawling labs, domed observatories, and dorms fully funded for female scientists from low-income backgrounds. Deborah never asked for it. But she cried when she walked through its halls the first time, quietly, of course, as always. Her hand never left his as she whispered, "You gave them a place I never had." "No," he replied, kissing her knuckles, "you gave me a reason to build it." They raised 2 children together, a daughter, Alara, who traced the stars like her mother did, and a son, Micah, who carried his father's calm and stubborn hands. Neither of them were forced into the family business. Both were taught how to open a bank account and how to apologize when they were wrong. Neither grew up rich in entitlement, only rich in being loved. John and Deborah never used the words, "you owe me," in their house, only, "I'm proud of you," only, "let's do better," only, "together." Their love matured like oil. Vintage ink, clearer over time, deeper in the margins. They didn't post about anniversaries. But John kept every handwritten note Deborah ever left on his desk, from, "Don't forget to eat lunch," to, "The stars were sharp tonight, they reminded me of you." And Deborah never stopped watching him from across the room when he spoke. She'd seen him 1,000 times, but still, her gaze held something reverent. As if he were the first man to ever say, "You matter," even when no one's watching. She went on to publish 3 acclaimed books, secure 5 major grants, and lead a team that discovered a rare binary star system that had remained hidden behind interference noise for decades. At the award ceremony for her Global Physics Prize, she was asked, "How do you manage being a world-renowned scientist and a mother of 2 while also mentoring hundreds of students?" Her answer made headlines. "Because my husband raised me first, he raised the version of me that I almost abandoned." Time, as it always does, moved in soft stealth. The children grew up, the institute expanded, their hair grayed together, slow as snowfall. John's beard turned silver at the chin first. Deborah laughed the day she noticed. "Distinguished," she teased. Deborah's vision faded slightly in her 50s. She refused to wear glasses at first. John went and got matching frames and wore them until she caved. "Now we match," he grinned, old and blurry. They traveled, not to Paris or Rome, but to quiet observatories in Iceland, to empty deserts in Namibia where the sky never stopped speaking, to mountain lodges where Deborah would sketch star maps while John read beside her with a thermos of spiced tea. They aged without spectacle, but always with grace. And then, one spring morning, after 29 years of marriage, Deborah collapsed while speaking to a room full of graduate students. A stroke, the doctors said. She survived the initial trauma, but her body never fully recovered. John was at her side every day. He fed her soup slowly, wiped her lips, read to her, even when she was too tired to answer. On the 3rd week, she said, "If I go first." "You're not. Don't let them call me an accident." John's hand trembled in hers. "They'll call you a force of nature, and if they don't, I will." That night, he began writing the foreword to her final book. It was titled simply, "Mass and Memory, A Life Between Two Orbits." His words became the first page. She was once mistaken for someone else, but the truth is, no one else could ever compare. She was not a comet flashing for attention. She was the orbit itself, patient, constant, and unyielding. If there's one thing she taught me, it's this. You don't find brilliance in noise. You find it in the silence someone chooses to fill with love. Deborah passed away in her sleep 2 months later. She wore a faded sweatshirt that John had given her in college. Her hair, once long and dark, had grayed to soft silver and was braided neatly over one shoulder. She was 58. At her funeral, thousands of people came, students, researchers, janitors, single mothers she had quietly funded through scholarships. They brought stories of how she'd changed their lives, just by existing, just by believing in them. John didn't speak at the podium. But after the last guest left, he sat beside her coffin and whispered, "You never had to be anything other than you, and you still became everything." He returned to the house, but the lights stayed off more often. The coffee mugs didn't move from their hooks. He lived quietly for 2 more years, still visiting the institute every Thursday to sit in the garden named after her. He answered letters from young physicists. He wrote birthday cards to his grandchildren. But everyone could see, he'd already given the best of himself. And one morning, they found him in bed, a small photo of Deborah tucked under his hand, his glasses still resting on the nightstand, fogged from a breath that would never come again. His will was simple. Bury me beside my wife, no gold, no marble, just words. On the shared gravestone in the hillside cemetery, overlooking the valley where fog still rolled low and slow each morning, the inscription read, "We were promised at birth, but we chose each other in every lifetime." And every year, on the day the Institute celebrated its founding, someone would place 2 cups of coffee on the steps. One always had a sticky note with only 2 words, "Still yours."